right, it is 9:30, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Good morning, and thank you all for joining. I'd like to welcome everybody to week 5 of the 2024 Watershed Wednesdays series. Most of you know me, but I'm Emily Dekar, the Agricultural Coordinator for the Upper Susquehanna Coalition. Watershed Wednesdays are hosted by the Upper Susquehanna Coalition and the Otsego County Conservation Association, and we'll be holding sessions every Wednesday from now through October 20th. The full schedule is posted on the USC website and the Facebook page. You can also sign up for email announcements on the USC website under the Watershed Wednesdays tab, and you'll get automated emails that way. The sessions are recorded and can be accessed on the USC website, and they're also posted on the Facebook page at a later date. So to get things started, our main presenter today is Amanda Barber. Amanda is the manager of the Cortland County Soil and Water Conservation District, and she's also a certified crop advisor. She's been involved with nutrient management and conservation planning for over 35 years and is involved in numerous local, regional, and statewide conservation and agricultural organizations, committees, and initiatives. Amanda grew up on a small dairy farm in Cortland County and operates that farm today with her husband and son. Our presentation today is Following the Nutrients, Strategies of Record Keeping, Finding the Low-Hanging Fruit, and Documenting Good Stewardship. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Amanda, and I will ask that we hold questions till the end, but feel free to put them in the chat, and then we'll get to them at the end of the presentation.
Thanks, Emily. Good morning, everyone. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about nutrient management, just some of the efforts that have been going on in Cortland County and what we have done to, as I've said, try to document some of the low-hanging fruit and the good stewardship of our farms in the community. So we're going to start with a little bit about what we know. So what is nutrient management? And basically, a farm can get credit for nutrient management if they are following nutrient management practices. And what does that mean? So that means that they are applying nutrients according to land-grant college recommendations, that they have a manure analysis, or they're utilizing book values when they're determining the value of their manure, that they have some sort of a spreader calibration or knowledge of their spreader's capacity, that they know what their yields have been or are, and that they have a cropping plan at the field level, and that they also have records about the cropping history on those fields. So the point of this is to say that a farm does not necessarily have to have a nutrient management plan in order to receive credit for nutrient management. We also know that we have over 3,000 farms in the county, or in the watershed, and there are about 70 CAFOs, 500,000 acres of ag land, but only about a quarter of that's under nutrient management. So what we think is that there's a lot of small farms out there with agricultural land that's not necessarily being utilized according to a nutrient management plan or doesn't have a nutrient management plan on it. But we also know that the animal density on our farms is fairly low. In 2015, EPA did an assessment of agriculture in New York and said that the average is 0.43 animal units per acre. Well, we know that that average is probably skewed a little bit in terms of the CAFO concentrations that we have. So that means, again, that's reinforcing the fact that we have a lot of small farms with probably low animal units per acre. We also know we have a lot of grass in New York. All you have to do is drive around and look around to know that. And we know that grass-based agriculture can utilize nutrients with less risk. And we also know that fertilizer prices and the economics of small farms have reduced the fertilizer use. And we are likely meeting those nutrient management standards on many farms under current management without even planning. I think the challenge is that we need to think about nutrient management rather than being a district-led exercise where we provide a farmer with recommendations or a plan. Think of it as a process to document what the farm is already doing. And to document that nutrient applications on farms don't exceed environmental thresholds. The question is, how do we do that, and how do we get that documentation to satisfy the standards without it being a burden on the farm, and without it being, or to try to keep it cost effective for us as districts. So what we're going to do, and what we have tried doing, is sort of targeting some farms and testing this theory. We were looking at farms that are grass-based. We tried to identify some farms here in Cortland County that had no animals or didn't have manure, or had a low animal unit density, small number of animals for the number of acres that they had, and some farms that were organic. And then we plan to hold nutrient management planning workshops. So rather than devoting individual time to individual farms to collect information and try to write them a plan, we decided to sort of go back to the old school method of some of the things we started back in the early days of nutrient management, which was bringing farmers in, letting them bring the information to us, letting them write out and document their plan themselves, and to see where they stood in terms of meeting those nutrient management standards. So the first thing that we did was we identified 5 farms. We verified that they were participating in the AEM program. And then we actually just called them up and told them what we were trying to do, why we were trying to do it, and invited them to come to a meeting. And then started to collect some basic information, or to help them collect basic information. You know, we knew that we needed all the usual things of animal numbers, information about their spreader, its model, you know, had they had it calibrated before, and did they have the results of that, pulling in their crop information. We wanted them to gather all that information that they had, and then we gathered what we had in our office and in our records. We also had to do some planning on our end to figure out what those guidelines actually looked like. In New York, we don't have specific recommendations or book values. So we borrowed the book values from Pennsylvania and developed some basic forms, mostly utilizing the template information that Emily had previously shared with all the districts. And we verified that they were FSA participants and used maps from FSA. A point about that was, you know, that a lot of times FSA cannot share information with the district unless there has been a form signed by the cooperator to allow that information to be shared with others. So to get around that, we asked FSA if they would be willing to prepare the farm maps and send them to the landowner. And then the landowner just forwarded those maps to us. So we were able to print out everything for the farms ahead of time, so they had good basic information to utilize during the workshop. So when they came to the workshop, we planned it was going to be about a 10 to 2 process. We thought we didn't want to keep them there too long. We knew that we wanted to make sure that they had something to eat. So we had ordered some pizza for lunch. We gave them copies of their maps. We gave them forms to fill out. We provided them with markers and highlighters, you know, different colored pencils and pens, gave them a calculator, and we made sure that there were helpers in the room, a district staff person. There were 5 farmers. There were 4 staff people there to give a hand, including Emily, who was one of our presenters. And we basically just gave them an introductory presentation, and then sat down and started working through compiling the information that they had brought with them. And then the results. So what we ended up with is a map. So they first took their map, they highlighted all the streams and sensitive areas on those maps. We gave them the instructions that said that they were to highlight those maps with setbacks, color-coded setbacks based on the required setback for the type of environmental concern that it was, whether it was a stream or whatnot. And so they took their farm plans, highlighted those maps, and we came back to the office then and made that electronic. So they produced a map for us of their farm. And then we had them fill out a field summary. They identified all their farm fields in this exercise. We've limited it to just 4 farms for this sample. They identified what the crop was and the rotation was on that field. We cross-referenced the FSA ID, gave the basic acres, all the general information that you want. This farm had 61 acres of land. We had them go through and figure out their animal and manure data. So first they itemized the animals that they had on the farm, their weights, figured out the animal units, took them through the exercise of determining how much manure that they produced. This is manure that they actually collect to spread on the farm. In this case, they ended up with 197 tons of manure. That's based on all these charts that we provide them. It really took very little time for them to get through some of this basic information. In this case of this farm, they did not have a spreader calibration, but they knew that their spreader number and model. We knew the book values in terms of the capacity of that spreader, which we converted to tons. So in this case, they had about 5 tons per load based on the bushels of manure that spreader held. Which came up to about 40 loads of manure that they actually would need to spread, believe it or not. Then we had them look at the different crops that they're producing. Again, in this case, it's grass hay. And we asked them what their yields were. In this case, application of manure, the season was not applicable because it's grass. The maximum manure application was recorded and the maximum fertilizer application. And that's all based on, if you click again, Emily, this chart. This is the chart that we get from Pennsylvania. You can see the middle section is for grass hay. This is a phosphorus-based manure application because this farm has no soil tests, so we must plan for phosphorus removal. And those highlighted sections showing if their yield is 3 to 4 tons. Again, it's going to be no incorporation, spring or fall. Looking what they can apply in terms of manure and fertilizer would be 15 tons and 150 pounds per acre. So that's where those numbers come from. And then we work with them to list out all their fields, what the application rate of manure is for those fields, and the maximum number of loads. So the concept being here that rather than worry so much about and ask the farmer exactly how many loads of manure that they've applied to their field, the question to them was, do you believe that you spread more than 36 loads of manure on field 1? More than 75 loads of manure on field 3? And sort of a quick check on that as you go down to the bottom, and the pink highlighted area is that or above the pink highlighted area is that they basically can spread on all of their fields over 900 tons of manure. And we know they had less than 200 tons of manure. They could spread 183 loads. They only had about 40 loads of manure to spread. It's pretty clear that in this case, this farmer, unless they were spreading all of their manure on one field, and it would have to be only one of those fields, they couldn't even tolerate spreading all of that manure on. They're more than likely, and they are meeting nutrient management standards. Another little quick double check is looking at the animal units. This farm only has 0.17 animal units per acre. So again, a very low animal density. And clearly this farm meets standards, and we were pretty pleased with the outcome of the process. Next slide, Emily. So the going through the presentation and going through the workshop with the farms was pretty informative to us. A few things that we took away from it, that low animal density is a good indicator of whether or not they can meet nutrient management standards on the farm. It was good to know that the FSA maps were accessible and available to us. And it was a nice workaround to be able to have those maps sent to the farms and then forwarded on to us. We didn't need to have the farmer sign a form, try to deal with electronic signatures, or going into the office to give approval for that information to be sent directly to us. They just got it and forwarded it on. And the maps were really great to use in the workshop session. It had all their acres and everything on there. The other interesting thing was that some of the organic producers, 2 of the producers that attended the meeting were organic, and they have records that they keep that provided much of the information that we needed. In the case of at least one farm, they had already a planned goal for manure applications on their fields already. And that was within the tolerance of the nutrient management when we did the calculations for their crops. So everything was consistent, and that was reassuring to us. And I think that's going to be pretty easy for them to go forward and continue to do their record keeping on the farm. Farms were also open to the idea of a spreading cap. For some reason, it's easier for them to think about keeping track of what the maximum number of loads that they can apply to a field rather than trying to keep track of the exact number that they apply to a field. We know there's been a lot of education. We know that farms are aware of the concerns of over applying manure and making sure that they distribute their manure. We know that farms value manure as a fertilizer because of the expense of inorganic fertilizers. And so they want to do a good job with managing their manure, and they want to help us too. They also indicated that, and fortunately, it reinforces our efforts to have some sort of an online tracking mechanism for manure spreading. I think if we get a tool that allows them to just check a box that says they've applied some manure on a field, so that we have the exact numbers at the end of the day, and they have the exact numbers at the end of the day, end of the year for their manure spreading, that'll be a useful tool for them. We also learned that not all fields may meet nutrient management standards, and that's okay. We just need to be able to document those fields that can meet standards and give the farms an opportunity and an easy to use way to just track where they're at in comparison to standards. And I think there's a good potential to document many more acres meeting nutrient management standards if we continue with this process. So I think that was all I had to say. I think farms were reassured to know that they were doing a good job, and if they continue to do the things that they're already doing, nutrient management doesn't need to be a practice that they have to implement and view as a burden. It's just to continue to do things the way that they are and to make good decisions.
Thanks, Amanda. So I have a couple follow-up slides. I just wanted to go through some things. Part of the workshop that Amanda held in Cortland County is part of this expanding nutrient management across all landscapes funding that we have available through the Upper Susquehanna Coalition. That funding was provided by the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, also known as NFWF. So just to clear up that confusion, but we have about a year remaining of that funding. We did get an extension here just recently. The numbers that we're looking for with that grant source that we have right now is 40,000 agricultural acres planned, and we're at about 22,000 right now. So we do need to continue with the next year and a couple months here to reach our deliverables for that grant. But the other part of that funding source was for urban nutrient management as well. So our goal was to reach 1,000 urban acres planned, and we did that already with a couple different ways. So we have contracts with a couple different partners right now and some soil and water districts. We have about 300, a little more than 300 urban plan acres that are actually written out plans. And then we also did a pledge card where landowners can fill out a form based on some criteria, which I'll show you here in a minute, and pledge that they are meeting urban nutrient management standards. So we had about 825 acres right now of urban pledge cards. So we're surpassed that 1,000 acres total. We're at almost 1,200. But again, that's something that we're going to continue as any type of nutrient management, whether it be urban or agriculture, is only a 1-year credit. So it's something that we will continue to work towards increasing those numbers. And this funding that we have right now is available for New York and Pennsylvania. So that map there that's down in the corner it is for the whole Upper Susquehanna watershed that the USC encompasses. So the northern portion of PA counties are also included in this. So again, the Urban Nutrient Management Plan, the USC worked with New York State DEC to create a plan guidance document. We also have this top 10 urban nutrient management practices to protect water quality using fertilizer sparingly and potentially save money. So this is the guideline in which anybody who is going to do these pledge cards would be following. And again, it's just a simple form. You can fill it out hard copy, or you can do it online using that QR code, or there's a link on the USC's website. There's also a link, I believe, on DEC's website, basically saying that you're following those top 10 best management practices for urban nutrient management. You fill out your name and address, some contact information, and the size of your yard, whether it be in square feet or acres. The other document that we created was this when to fertilize your turf grass flow chart. So this goes into play a little bit more with those facilities that are doing actual urban nutrient management plans. So golf courses, schools, college campuses, those types of areas. Some county and state parks are working on these types of plans. So this is kind of more geared towards those where most landowners, not all, but most, are not doing fertilizer or anything like that. So with that, if there are any questions, we will take them at this point. Amanda, I don't know if you can see the chat, but there is a question from Danielle. She's asking, are you planning to do more workshops? How are you planning to approach them, asking specific farms again or something else?
So Danielle, we put a post on our Facebook page and included it in a news release that we were looking for farms who would be interested in working with us to document their good nutrient management practices. We haven't gotten any takers, but we have identified some additional farms that we think are some of those low-hanging fruit, the organic farms, the grass-based farms, those that have low animal densities for the acres that they own. And we are going to reach out to them and hold another, ask them, invite them to come to another group meeting to do the documentation. It's like anything else. I think people are busy and they're not necessarily willing to volunteer to do a lot of things, but most of them, if you ask them to spend some time with you, they have the information that we need to be able to document their stewardship ethics.
If anybody else has any questions, feel free to come off mute as well, or you can type questions in the chat. But I will also bring everyone's attention to next week's presentation. It is Watersheds and the New Wetland Regulation by Krista Spohr from New York State DEC, Environmental Program Specialist with the Bureau of Ecosystem Health. So that will be at the same time next week, 9:30 on October 9th. But we will stick around if there are any other questions that anybody has.
I think Emily, this would be a good time to mention, I made brief mention of the fact that we are working on developing a tool that farms will be able to use to document their manure spreading activities. It'll act as a plan and a manure spreading record keeping tool for them. And I think that, this is another way that we can help some of the smaller farms that don't have either the need or the requirement to develop a large nutrient management plan, who are already meeting nutrient management standards because of the limited amount of nutrients that they do apply on their property, can help us to document that information and record them and get credit for that.
Yeah, absolutely. That tool is in the works, and we're hoping to have kind of a test model out later this fall, early winter. There's another question in the chat from Tim Wimmer. Can you please provide copies of the forms you use to document the farm information? Absolutely, Tim. We can get those sent out to you.
And I would also say that Emily and I are both willing to come and help with a workshop or a meeting if you hold one, as just being some extra people in the room if need be. So
there is another question as well, as a follow-up to the original question from Danielle, asking if you can state again what farms you focused on for your first workshop.
So the farms that basically they were farms that we knew, farms that had either recently, in this case, two of the farms had recently sold their herds. So we knew that they had just a few heifers, only a few animals for the acres that they owned. They were organic, so we knew that they were largely grass-based and probably had limited nutrients that they were applying. And so, yeah, low animal unit densities, organic, grass-based. Those are the farms that we focused on.
I'll also mention too, the funding source that the USC has available right now, that is funding to help support the districts and getting this nutrient management planning acres. So there is a per acre rate that the USC is paying at this point. It's contracted to the districts, and then the districts can utilize that funding either for their staff time, or they could use it as incentive payments as well if they wanted to try and incentivize those farms to come to a workshop to get those planning documents taken care of. But with that, unless there's any other questions, we will give you back a couple minutes of your day. And again, the video from today will be posted on the USC website as well as the Facebook page. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.